I think it's going.
Okay.
There we go.
Great. Yes. Okay, so today we're going to talk to Xinrou about working in tech. She works at Microsoft. And why don't I just have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your job and how you've been involved with Girl Scouts.
Yeah, thanks, Renee. Hi, everyone. My name is Xinrou Tan. I am currently a data and AI specialist at Microsoft. I've been with Microsoft for about 4 years now, and I have been involved with the Girl Scout Spirit of Nebraska for a very long time. I think like 7, 8 years at this point, maybe now. I've really enjoyed all of my interactions with the Girl Scouts, with the council. I've attended camp, the YW camps. I've attended Art Venture multiple times. I've participated in a lot of the annual conferences, like Why We Lead, and it's been a pleasure to engage with everyone. And I'm lucky to be able to have this session here with you guys.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So tell us a little bit about your job. What do you do?
Sure. So when I say I'm a data and AI specialist, it could mean a lot of things. That's just a fancy title, but essentially that means that I am in the sales organization at Microsoft, and my role is to sell to and talk to enterprise customers within, a certain industry. So, for example, my industry is within media and entertainment. So I work with media and entertainment customers like Viacom, CBS, Hearst, which has TV stations, magazines like Cosmopolitan magazine. It belongs to her, so I speak to them. And my area of focus and specialty is within the data and artificial intelligence space. So I help these organizations drive those data and analytics efforts forward. So I typically reach out to them and say, hey, for example, if I'm working with a particular media company, I say, hey, what are you guys doing on your broadcast system? Are you collecting any analytics to be able to drive to newer, segments that, viewer segments? Can we find the data that you have on it and mine it, do some machine learning and analytics on top of it to help them figure out how to capture a broader segment? So that they can make more money. At the end of the day, my role is to help empower those organizations to be able to achieve more. And that's also the Microsoft mission statement, and through the lens of data and AI. So that's primarily what I do. I do a lot of other things too, but that's my main role.
Yeah. So can you explain a little bit like your education and then like your career path? Like how did you end up here and what sort of things did you study?
Sure. Yeah, I had a pretty interesting path getting to where I am today. So when I was in college, I studied marketing and management information systems, MIS, which I call it people who want to study computer science but can't code. I tried coding, but I'm really bad at it. So they said, well, computer science may not be for you. So MIS it is. And so I was really passionate about the intersection between technology and business. And I wanted to be in a role that could touch both. And coming out of UNL, so University of Nebraska is where I went to, I wanted to get into a tech role, but it was quite difficult at that point to try to get into a big tech company like Microsoft or Google or Facebook or Amazon, right? And so I figured, I might need to just get my skills aligned from a business standpoint. And so when I was recruiting, I actually got an offer from Union Pacific Railroad based in Omaha, Nebraska. And I started my career there. I was with them for 5 years in their marketing and sales group. So I learned a lot about account management, about working with customers, about driving business development. And I knew that my passion was still in tech, so I needed to somehow make my way there. And so that was also when I got engaged with the Girl Scouts. But while I was there, I actually moved to Pittsburgh for a promotion. And while I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I went to Carnegie Mellon University for my MBA. And during my MBA, I focused in technology leadership because, like I said, I was laser focused in wanting to get into the tech sector. And I figured that would be a good way for me to get there. And when I was recruiting during the end of my MBA, I actually, was lucky enough to get a couple of offers from different tech companies. And in evaluating the different fits, especially from a cultural standpoint, Microsoft just happened to be the one that I picked. And so that's where I started, and I've been here for 4 years since then. But yeah, that's basically the highlights of how I got to where I am.
Okay. So what does the day look like in your job? Like a typical day?
Sure. It can vary depending on what I need to do. But the good thing about my role at Microsoft is that it's incredibly flexible. So even pre-COVID, I could work from essentially anywhere. So I'm based in New York City, and my office is in New York City, but we don't have like a cubicle or a desk or anything. We go in there and we just basically sit wherever we want. As long as we have our laptops and our phones, we're basically connected to our customers and to our teams. And so now with COVID, I mean, it hasn't really changed that much because we can basically work from anywhere, and we more or less set our hours, even though we have, working hours where we have to jump on calls and meetings and all of that. But on my day-to-day job, what I do is I essentially have to reach out to my customers, what we call hunting. I have to hunt for new opportunities, right? Because I sit in sales, so I do have sales accountability over those accounts to grow the business by a certain amount every year. And so I reach out to my customers, but I don't just reach out to people who, we've spoken to, like people in IT, typical people who already have relationships with Microsoft because of, software agreements and all of that in the past. But I reach out to new groups within my customers, right? And try to help educate them on what Microsoft can do in the space of data and AI, right? So for example, I used to also cover professional sports like the NFL, the NBA, the Major League Baseball teams. And what I would do is I would reach out to, maybe say with basketball, I'd reach out to the basketball analytics team. And I'd say, hey, I know you guys are doing a lot in terms of giving your coaches more analytics to prepare them for matches, right? And prepare them for training. What are you guys doing in that space? What kind of data are you guys collecting? How can, maybe Microsoft's platform help you get to that insight faster? How can we get your coaches armed up with a lot of this information so that you can help your athletes become better players, right? Or predict injuries. And so my role was to just get out there and start talking to a lot of these people. So I spend a lot of my day doing that. I also spend a lot of my day nurturing existing opportunities. So ones that I've already brought into the company, I would work with my technical team to help the customer realize that project, right? So I need to make sure that we have the right support from Microsoft to help the customer get to that point. And I also spend a lot of my day doing conversations like these with people to help them learn more about my role. I do a lot of recruiting work with my alma mater, Carnegie Mellon, right? So we're trying to always recruit new talent into Microsoft, and so I spend a lot of time doing that as well. And just a bunch of other things. There's a bunch of internal reporting meetings that are kind of boring, but are mandatory that I have to do, and I'm sure everyone kind of has to do that as well in a workplace. But that's basically a gist of it.
That sounds interesting, exciting, and challenging. So as Girl Scouts, we think a lot about girls and women in tech. So in your field, well, you're not a programmer. Do you see, is it still like male dominated in your field? And did you have that experience in school as well, kind of being one of the few women in the room, or what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think it's still the case, but I think it's changing very rapidly. I think diversity is something that a company like Microsoft strives to do, not just as a checklist item, right? I know a lot of places where they're like, yeah, diversity has to be part of our organizational culture, but a lot of people just do it because it checks a box, right? I feel like Microsoft, it's ingrained in every single one of us employees that we have to drive towards that. So in light of that, I've actually seen a lot of hiring pushes for diversity, not just in terms of gender, but also in terms of backgrounds, in terms of race, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of languages. And so the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis are all from different walks of life, right? So my team consists of both male. Actually, my team is pretty unique because I have about more than half of the people on my team are female, right? And in tech, that just seems different, right? So
Yeah.
it just doesn't seem to be always the case. Now, I'll caveat that by saying that I'm in the sales organization, right? So sales might be a little bit different, even though it's still in tech, it's sales. But when I start looking at the engineer side, right, the people who actually build the software, then yeah, I would say that there's still a pretty big disparity when it comes to male and females that are in role. But I do see that slowly changing. I do see an increase in that. And I also see motivation to hire more females and people and minorities into the organization. So I would say, you know, if you have any interest at all in tech or any STEM related career, this is a great time to start learning more about it, because the industry is definitely looking for that diversity of thought and talent.
Yeah, so in Girl Scouts, we talk a lot about that and trying to encourage girls to consider those tech fields if it's something they have an interest in. Can you just talk a little bit about why that's important? Why it's important that we continue to encourage girls to do that?
Yeah, so I think even for me when I was younger, I felt very intimidated, right, by the idea of getting into a STEM field, particularly tech, right, because that was my area of interest. I felt like the people working in tech did not look like me. And I was like, well, I don't feel like I have a place there because of that. And I felt like there was this insurmountable like mountain that I had to climb in order to get there. But it's easier now, I would say. It's definitely not as easy as it could be, I would say. But if you do have an interest in it and you want to learn more, I definitely encourage you to actually start talking to people like me, right, that have made it through, and honestly get honest feedback about like what you need to do in order to get into tech, because it is not difficult, but it can be intimidating, I would say, still. But if it's a passion, you should not let anything stop you. You should read up on, you know, the latest tech news, right? Try to find which tech company out there has cultures and values that you're aligned to, right? Find those companies that you feel like you connect well with, and try to talk to people within those companies and find out what drives them and what makes that company great, right? Because once you get more an idea of what they do and the people who work there, it's just, you know, not that difficult to envision yourself being there. So it's baby steps, you know, it's honestly just having a conversation with someone to learn more, and to be curious about what's out there. I think all of those are important things, but don't let you know, what you see discourage you, because I know that it can feel intimidating. But the opportunity is definitely out there, and it's very much encouraged right now for you to be looking into it.
Okay, great. Thank you. So you've talked a little bit about what you do. So
Mhm.
what is it about your job that you like? Like, what's the elements of your job that inspire you or get you excited, or that keep you in your job?
Yeah, so it's funny because I've been in my same role for 4 years now at Microsoft, and that's considered to be long. And so I'm starting to look at doing something different, not because I'm bored, but because I do need to challenge myself in a different way and get more diversity in terms of experiences. But I love this job so much. I love being able to talk about Microsoft's AI strategy, right? What are we doing in the world of analytics? I know AI just seems like such a buzzword sometimes, but we truly have a lot of principles and solutions within that space that gets me really excited, right? So if you can imagine, you know, we work very heavily within the healthcare space. So I have a couple of customers who are also within the healthcare space. And in the times right now, right, with COVID and this pandemic looming over us, it's becoming increasingly important to have a lot of data to move a lot of these advances in research and in looking for a vaccine forward, right? And that basically means getting access to data, making it readily available for researchers. And Microsoft has done a lot in this space to allow, all of this data to be freely available, right? So you don't have to pay to get to this data. And we're also opening up our platform for researchers to use to expedite some of the compute and research that they're doing so that they could hopefully get to outcomes sooner. Right. And so it's a lot of these different things that, make my role really exciting, is knowing that we can do stuff like this that can actually impact the real world, that actually has an impact on day-to-day life, and being able to talk to it and tell customers like, yeah, we've done this before, we've done this before successfully, and here's how we've done it, and get those customers to also buy in so that we can, grow our mind share across all of these different organizations in different industries. So, whenever I get to say those things and, convince the customers to even look at our platform, it just gets me very excited. And honestly, that's what keeps me going day to day.
Okay, cool. I think one last question for you.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about like what types of jobs are available in tech, and whether that's like positions that go across companies, that you see, like if your job is an equivalent and maybe there's programmers, or like the types of jobs that could be available in tech that girls could look to maybe do someday. It's
Yeah.
like a broad generalization of types of jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question, because when you look at tech, a lot of people just immediately think, oh, I need to be a coder, right? Like I need to be very technical in order to get a role within a tech company. That's not the case. That's a small sliver of what roles are available at tech companies, right? Yeah, that's a predominant one because they are working on code and all of that, but that doesn't mean that there are no other roles. So for example, I'm in sales, but even within sales, you have different levels of different types of roles, right? So I focus on a specific solution area, right? Data and AI. But you have people who focus on customer relationships. You have people who focus on driving solutions. And then you have the more technical people who are focusing on, building out those solutions. So if you're interested in a technical role in sales, there is a role for that. If you're not interested in a technical role in sales, there's also a role for that. Right? You have roles where you are basically working internally to get processes and programs completed for your, account teams, like people like me, right? And you have roles that work with third party and partners that are part of the Microsoft ecosystem, again, not needing any kind of technical background or expertise. So it is across the board. So I'm just talking in sales. Now, if we bring it back to Microsoft in general, you have project managers and product managers who manage specific products within Microsoft, right? Like, for example, we're using Teams now. There's a whole team in the background that's supporting this product and make enhancements available, ensure that it's up all the time. Those are also people that sit within Microsoft, right? Every tech company has a myriad of roles, whether you want to be technical, whether you don't want to be technical, whether you want to be in front of customers, whether you don't want to be in front of customers. I think that if you have a general interest in tech, that should be enough to lead you to at least find out more about what's available by talking to people and pinpointing, what aligns best with your passions and your skills. So there's plenty out there. You just have to look for them.
Look for them and dream big, because it'll change quickly, right? I mean, it kind of things move quickly, and
yes, absolutely. It's always changing, but it's always evolving. But the needs are always there. There's always needs to have diversity in girls in tech. So any of you watching should definitely reach out to me if you're interested in learning more. I'd be happy to talk to you and help hopefully guide you to one day work at Microsoft or any tech company that you love.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Xinrou, for sharing your thoughts and experiences and recommendations with Girl Scouts. So
absolutely. Thank you, Renee, for thinking of me.
Sure.